Welcome back to Kings of Columbus. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis, and we are doing texter questions again, Bill. We did this last week, but I saved everything related to the Ohio State quarterback position for a separate show.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have like 6 things. We'll dig in a little more on each of these questions, but I think this show is not unlike the show we did late in preseason camp a year ago, where it was like the quarterback situation. And we were kind of like, okay, here's what we think. And so there, after spring football, some of these questions from texters I've been saving for a while, but nothing has changed in people's minds since the spring game until now, because nothing's happened.
Right.
So there's a little bit of quarterbacks. Right? Do you think it's reasonable that there is a little bit of that within the Ohio State fan base?
For sure, because this is what happens, Doug, when you've been hurt before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Well, and that's the thing. A year ago when we talked about this, they hadn't been hurt.
Yeah.
And they were just like, hey, man, Ryan and I. And we were kind of like, man, you guys and Ryan, you're going to be great. It's going to be great, you know? Remember how much you really love each other. People were like, but I'm a little bit nervous. And we said, it'll be great. And then it was like, oh, have you reflected much upon that? That I think, was it not our general opinion on Kings of Columbus a year ago that, yeah, it's up in the air, but they have 2 good options and Ryan Day knows what he's doing and it'll be fine. Is that a fair encapsulation of our quarterback view a year ago going into the season?
Very much so. Yeah.
Was that wrong?
Very, very much so. Yeah.
So, like, do you think it was very wrong? Because then it was like, man, they had a Notre Dame game was a pretty good date. Ryan brought flowers. There was a surprise at the end of the night. You know, like it was, the Ohio State fan base got dropped off after the Notre Dame game. Like, I think I'm in love all over again with this quarterback whisperer. Did you see the 3rd down throw? Right? It wasn't like it was disastrous from the jump.
No, I think like the Notre Dame game was like a date that went horrible, like in every way imaginable. But then yet for some reason at the end of the night, you still got a kiss, right? Like
yeah,
because that was not a particularly good game.
Yeah.
Like until, and honestly, even the kiss was kind of awkward. It was kind of an awkward kiss at the end.
Okay. Let's get into what our tech subscribers are feeling. And if you guys want to be part of this, you know it by now, 614-662-4509. You can send a text to that number. You get a link back to sign up. You get a 2-week free trial and it's $6 a month after that. Do it now. Do it when the season starts. And if you're already doing it, you might get a little kiss at the end of the night here. Might be awkward, but we appreciate you.
I can promise you it will be awkward. Yeah.
This is Chris and Jim kind of together got us off to a running start with their texts. Chris said, last summer, I remember thinking how unsure I was about Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. I didn't feel as optimistic as I had going into the Braxton Miller era or JT Barrett and Cardale Jones or Dwayne Haskins or Justin Fields or CJ Stroud. In the past, I always thought the quarterback play would work itself out. My point is, a lot of people thought Ryan Day would figure it out last season because he always does. And Kyle McCord ended up being subpar, in my opinion. I mean, imagine him without Marv. So shouldn't we all be pretty worried that here we are in 2024, and once again, Ohio State doesn't have a clear starter, and none of the quarterbacks are showing command of this offense? So that's Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jim sent an even longer one that I think is fair to boil down to this. Here's the same question worded 3 ways. Is Ryan Day mucking up the quarterback room? Is Ryan Day sacrificing development at the expense of keeping the room full? Can Ryan Day actually develop 5 quarterbacks? So that's a little expansion on the idea about the room, but muck. Muck was the verb that caught my attention there, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
These are people expressing a lack of confidence in Ryan Day's ability to handle this. So if we agree that this relationship is at a different point, how much different do you think fans should feel right now? It's happening all over again. I don't trust this guy as much as I did before to do this. Where should fans be?
I don't think you should be all the way to I don't trust this guy, but like, you know, a healthy amount of skepticism is probably not even the right word, right? But just like maybe not being as vociferous in our support of him, maybe of Ryan Day, and the ability to find answers is probably the right way to go about it. Like make them prove it to you kind of thing. And it is funny looking back now, like the idea of, oh, they'll figure it out. It's like, what did he have to figure out? like prior to last year, what was actually figured out? Like, yes, he was the OC when they went through the Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins thing, but it's like he didn't have to figure out Justin Fields. He had to go get Justin Fields, but then once he got him, the question was answered, right? I don't know that there was a whole lot to figure out with CJ Stroud either. He was very clearly the next guy. So this was like this was the first time that there was like a legitimate quarterback competition with players that he recruited with him as the head coach. And it's not that he made the wrong decision. It's just that they ended up with not having like a great quarterback. I don't think they would have had one either way. So then that should I think recalibrate people a little bit to just maybe not. I'm saying like us included, to just not assume that year after year that this is going to be easy. Doesn't mean that Ohio State won't have what it needs at quarterback every year. I think most years they probably will. But it's okay to question it in the offseason. When like it felt odd to question it last offseason, and certainly okay to question it now.
What did you think of the process? Because Ryan Day has now come out and said, I actually didn't like, or I shouldn't have let it continue into the season. That they took the battle into a couple regular season games. And at the time it was like, well, that's what Jim Harbaugh had done with Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy. And that worked out great. And so, hey, if Harbaugh can do it, Ryan Day can do it. But now Ryan Day, looking back, doesn't like how that part of it went. There's two different things here. There's the products and the process. So the process does affect the products, but no matter how you do it, you can't conjure a CJ Stroud out of nowhere if it's not there, if the pieces aren't there to make that. So what did you think of the process and maybe what Ryan Day thinks he's learned, hard lessons he learned from handling the quarterback battle a year ago?
I mean, at the time, I didn't hate the process. I was actually in favor of letting it carry out into the season, right? So I'm not going to pretend like I wasn't of that mind then. Looking back at it, maybe I was probably wrong about that. And maybe there's a lesson there about perhaps depends on the types of quarterbacks you have. Like if they're too similar, maybe that's a bad idea to like having actually, because like I would say that JJ McCarthy and Cade McNamara are pretty different players. So like carrying that into the season and kind of seeing which flavor of quarterback works better for your offense almost kind of makes sense. But if the quarterbacks are more or less the same, which I think Devin Brown and Kyle McCord are more similar than they are different.
Did we think that at the time though?
No. And we were no. And I think like I think if you watch Devin Brown in high school, you see a level of athleticism that did feel a little bit different, but it's never actually shown itself on the college field. But we talked about him in those terms anyway. So I think that was kind of where things got a little sideways. It was like we talked about Devin Brown almost as if he was like a pure dual threat, scramble around, kind of like dipsy do kind of quarterback, and he's like clearly he's not that. But I think that felt like a distinction at the time that I think ended up not being true.
How much, this is not a texter question, we'll get back to those in a second, but how much do you think Chip Kelly running the quarterback's room instead of Corey Dennis, Chip Kelly being much more of a partner with Ryan Day in shaping this offense and making decisions, Chip Kelly calling the plays, does that automatically make this process better? Regardless of what the options are, it's like, okay, well, I'll take the Ryan Day, Chip Kelly process and decision-making over the Ryan Day and Corey Dennis is over here too, decision-making and process.
Yeah, I think so. To what degree, I don't know, but like I'll take that experience, the experience that Ohio State has now making this decision, if there's even a decision to make, which I guess we'll talk about, but compared to what they had last year, I think is drastically different and certainly desired.
Ryan Day talking about public talking publicly about private staff votes about the quarterback decision, and that being kind of a story then. Oh, what was the vote? Oh, I heard the vote was this. I think the votes are over. Are the votes? This is no longer a democracy. This is King Ryan with his hand of the king, Chip Kelly, making decisions, and they're not asking the tight ends coach and the running backs coach what they think. Is that where we are now?
Maybe we're at the very least we're at the point of Ryan Day not telling us that he did that. I don't think, because I don't think that just like opened a can of worms that I don't think you want to open, because then you can just, your imagination can run wild. You can use that little tidbit of information to kind of frame any point you'd like to make, right? Because we don't know what the votes were actually, but we know that there were, we know two things, I guess, that like really I think created camps in this. One, Ryan Day told us that he like took a straw poll of the staff, and two, there was at least a time when Devin Brown was playing better than Kyle McCord. So like take those two things and you can kind of go whichever direction you want to go.
To be fair, super interesting stuff for him to say.
Yeah, of course.
It's always one of those things when you're in our position and we are merely conduits for the fans and people say stuff, it's like, wow, thank you for sharing that information. And then you look back and think, I don't know if you should have done that. Our advice would be to keep us in the dark more. And I don't really want to give that advice to Ryan Day, but you know, the era of democracy in the Ohio State offensive staff meeting room might be over, right?
Well, that, and I also think too, they did definitely wanted to keep this process more in the dark than last year's process. We watched a lot of spring ball last year.
Mm-hmm.
We did not watch that much spring ball.
Again, I mean, it's like we're not advocating for that, but you know, process. So again, the process is only the process, though. If you could have, if you had C.J. Stroud and Justin Fields competing to be the quarterback, and the process was, we're going to blindfold both of them and see if they can figure out where the receivers are in the route tree just on gut instinct, and maybe they have a third eye, or a perfect process with you and I as the quarterback options, you're still going to get a better quarterback out of CJ Stroud and Justin Fields, regardless of process. So process is not the only thing, but I certainly believe in process improvement matters, right? Almost that, like, how you get there doesn't matter. Like, the end game's the end game, but over time, if you have a good process, you will get better results, even though it's not a straight line to good process equals good results. Do you think it's fair to say last year was jacked up process, jacked up result? Like, is that, and do you think, like, how interlinked was the process and the end game? That they took it into the regular season. They really kind of were very public with how they were doing it. And then the quarterback play was beneath the Ohio State standard. Is that linked?
I think it's linked. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just makes me wonder, like, how expectations were set, and then how that might have impacted the play of the quarterbacks. Which maybe the answer is like expectations were set exactly the way they needed to be, and it didn't impact the play at all. But like, that's kind of where my mind goes.
Yeah.
I also like I'm not trying to like take a thing that didn't work out great and like twist it into a good thing, but it does make me wonder on one level, at least, like, on some level, that like maybe Ohio State had to go through that. Like, this is my earlier point. Like, they had really not had to do this before under Ryan Day. It was always pretty clear cut who the quarterback was going to be. And this was the first time that it wasn't, and they had to figure out the process of finding the right guy. And yeah, it was jacked up, as you said, but maybe now, because it was jacked up, they have figured out a better way to do it. So maybe that leaves them in a better place moving forward. And like last year was a little bit of a sacrificial lamb kind of year.
And as we said at the time, I mean, Ohio State has a long and less than dignified history of messing up quarterback battles, going back to Joe Germain and Stanley Jackson, and through Justin Zwick and Troy Smith, and into Todd Beckman and Terrell Pryor. And, like it's JT Barrett and Cardale Jones in 2015. Like it hadn't happened with Ryan Day, but now he has his example to throw in with the time Urban kind of screwed it up, and to throw in with the time that Tress kind of screwed it up, and to throw in with the time that Coop kind of screwed it up. So, it's not the first time it happened, but
it's a rite of passage for Ohio State head coach.
Maybe you thought the guy who is the most qualified quarterback expert of that group, although Tress might raise his hand and be like, "Hey, man, I played quarterback in college too." Maybe he would avoid that, and it turned out no,
he did not.
He didn't avoid that.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2. This is Nick. I couldn't care less who ends up being the quarterback, but I think we need something better than Kyle McCord last year, and I don't think we'll get that. So now this is end game. This is product. How confident are you that the Ohio State quarterback play will be better in 2024 than it was in 2023?
I'm confident. I'm not saying it's going to be like worlds better, but I think it's going to be better in like some pretty important areas. It is interesting to look, like, if you do a side-by-side comparison of Kyle McCord and Will Howard, the presumed starter, they're pretty similar statistically. Like, Kyle McCord is a much better downfield passer, and so he's like slightly better in stuff like average depth of target and yards per attempt and stuff like that. But like, completion percentage is similar. I have some numbers here, courtesy a friend of the show, Ryan Donnelly, by the way, who just like sent me a spreadsheet of all the returning quarterbacks in college football and like all of their stats. So it was great.
Nice.
Like interception rate, turnover worthy plays, pressure to sack rate, negative play rate. They're all kind of similar. The one area where Will Howard is drastically better than Kyle McCord is like quarterback play under pressure. I just think he handles pressure much better than Kyle McCord does. And I'm not talking like escapability scrambling, because we know that Will Howard's not a scrambler. It's just like not always letting pressure lead him to a bad decision or a bad play or an empty play kind of thing. So I think handling pressure and then obviously running, like design running ability, are two areas where Ohio State will be much improved, I think, compared to where they were last year. But all the other stuff like might be the same, though. There's going to be some inconsistencies throwing the ball because Will Howard is an inconsistent passer. So I guess it just depends on what you think, like Nick or anyone else who thinks the play needs to be better, like what exactly that looks like in your mind. Because if it looks like CJ Stroud, then you're not going to get it. If it looks like improvement in a couple of key areas, I think you might, even if the quarterback's not throwing for 4,000 yards and 45 touchdowns.
Kyle McCord's lack of production under pressure, could that be linked back to the process that he was in a quarterback battle that he was trailing at times, that the coach publicly said he was trailing at times, and then it felt like he kind of swept in the last week of preseason camp and took the job back? But is that where, when you're under pressure, is that where looking over your shoulder shows up, where you think, okay, it's breaking down, but rather than playing with confidence and making my read here, I'm going to either make this last read or I'm going to take off and go, but I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to do it. You play with a fear of making a mistake. You play with, and man, if I throw a pick here and then I have another bad drive, maybe they'll put the other guy in. Is that related, or what do you think it's more that there's just something in Kyle McCord's game? And again, like dealing with pressure doesn't, like CJ Stroud is like, okay, I see this. Like maybe like you figure out, you solve, as always so with CJ, you solve the problem before it happens.
Right.
Dealing with pressure doesn't have to mean running.
Nope.
But especially with an offensive line, and there's an offensive line component of this, that with the uncertainty on the offensive line a year ago, it was going to be more difficult for any Ohio State quarterback to look his best. But there are certain quarterbacks that get affected more by that. And it felt like Kyle McCord really was affected by, again, a kind of a subpar Ohio State offensive line. did he lack confidence because of the way he wound up with the job, and it showed up under pressure?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I got one thing I'll say before I answer that. His pressure rate was the same as CJ Stroud's. Like, he was not pressured at like an outsized amount of snaps compared to like his predecessors. But he handled it way worse than all of them.
Okay.
But no, I do think it's partly a product of that, right? I think that's probably when those thoughts and fears creep up the most is when you're put in a position to make a decision to solve a problem. And Kyle McCord just didn't do that well. So I think that's part of I think that's part of too, not necessarily just the process of like trying to find the starter last year, but maybe the process of developing quarterbacks in general. Like I think Ohio State needs to play its young quarterbacks more. So that when it is time for them to come be a starter, that maybe they handle those situations a little better. And I realize like CJ Stroud was awesome at it and like hardly played at all as a true freshman. I'm not saying that's an automatic solve to the problem, but I think it could help. So there's a lot of things that factor into it, but it's probably mostly whatever's in like sort of innate in the quarterback. And I don't know that that's a strength of Kyle McCord's is handling that part of the game.
So 2 years ago, when there was a chunk of the media and the fan base that spent a decent portion of the season screaming, why isn't Kyle McCord playing more in these blowouts? That was correct. That was a good instinct.
I think that is a generally correct instinct. Yeah. Use the opportunities to play your young quarterbacks.
Oh, take a win on that. Sometimes you just scream and it's like, is this? So what is your level of confidence that the quarterback play will be better than Kyle McCord? That's the nut of this question. It needs to be better than McCord, and I'm worried that it won't be. Yeah. I don't think it will be. Nick's not saying he's worried. He's saying, I don't think it will be. You think it will be?
I think it will be. I think it will be in the ways that it needs to be. Yeah.
And I think it's worth reminding, they were right there. The quarterback play was good enough for 11 games, 3 quarters, and 10 minutes. It put them right there. And so, I mean, there's other things here, right? I mean, there's the early pick against Michigan that if you never have that, then I guess are people still fighting over whether that was McCord or Marv and the route and the read or whatever? But
he was Kyle, in my opinion, was bad for like the whole Michigan game. It wasn't just a pick; he missed a lot of throws.
But they didn't lose to Michigan by 30, right? Like the point. The point is, I think it's worth Ohio State fans, and they know it. You know it. Was still right there. So it doesn't have to be leaps and bounds past what Kyle McCord played. Like it wasn't great. It wasn't the Ohio State standard. It was still almost good enough. Mm-hmm. So.
And this team will have an even better defense and a better run game.
Yeah. So worth keeping in mind. But also you're saying, and I don't know. I guess I think that too. I mean, there were just too many games where it felt like Kyle McCord just kind of, there were just missed throws that you didn't really understand why. And as much as like the last drive of the Notre Dame game was awesome, I don't know if there's a million more sort of peaks that you would point to and be like, man, everything broke down and that guy just found a way on that play. Right. So
he just like never settled in. Like you kept waiting for it. And it's just, maybe the second half of the Maryland game was like, oh, maybe that's it. And then like, nope, it just like it never really happened.
Yeah. It wasn't a linear.
Yeah.
There wasn't an ascension of progression. It was a lot of fits and starts and still was almost good enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Almost. This is Tony. I'm sort of getting the same vibe as last year, meaning no quarterback is taking the job with their play. And I don't see a special trait in either of them. What do you think Will Howard and Devin Brown's special traits are, if any? Second, if McCord was a 5 out of 10 last year, what's the floor and what's the ceiling with this duo? So I have certainly fallen prey to the traits conversation. It's my favorite conversation. And I was very eager to grasp a special trait with Kyle McCord a year ago, which after the Notre Dame game was like, oh, he's cool under pressure. Because they had a good drive at the end and they won. Cool. And I don't know if that was right. That might have been like, I don't know. I mean, that's like a little bit of that is like walking up to some person and being like, what can I say about this person? It's like, nice haircut. And it's like, okay, is that really a thing? Is that even you? You know, you just sat in the chair. I don't want this to be like, hey, Kyle McCord's gone. Let's rip him. I think he's going to have a good year at Syracuse. I think he's in many ways, a fine quarterback. And I think he does have more ability than he showed last year. I think with a lot of pressure and a little bit of uncertainty for sure on the offensive line and a little bit of a wonky process, he did not play his best. He did not rise to the occasion. He did not meet the Ohio State standard. I don't think he's a terrible quarterback.
I agree.
But in the end, I'm not sure what his special trait was because I don't think he was like a brilliant processor like CJ. He clearly was not a great athlete who's going to get out there and make plays with his legs. I guess he has a good arm, but I don't know that we saw, oh my God, he just like ripped that throw in a tiny window because he can throw it 130 miles per hour. I don't know that if he has that special trait, I don't know that we saw him use it a ton. So in the end, I think that line on his resume, special traits, right? On your resume, you're applying like special traits. Like I can do a backflip, you know, like I can train a wild raccoon. Like you put things on there. That might be blank on his resume right now. On his resume that got him into Syracuse, I'm not sure. Like it's like I'm a good quarterback. What would his special trait have been? McCord's special trait in the end?
Yeah, probably arm strength.
Okay,
probably.
All right. What's Devin Brown's special trait?
Maybe the same. Like the one thing with Devin Brown can really throw the ball down the field.
Okay.
In a way that I think is a little bit next level. He's got to figure out how to throw the ball to all the other areas of the field more consistently, but he can really pump that thing down the field. So I would probably say that like a physical attribute, it's probably that. And then like a less tangible one maybe would be like I don't know, I got a little something to me that people like kind of thing. Like people like rally around me a little bit kind of deal.
Yeah.
Like that's a trait, right?
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And I do like, I thought he dropped that trait again, like on the first day of interviews of spring ball when he's like, the job is not locked down. I'm here to compete. And I was like, ooh, I do think he has that more than, more than any quarterback at Ohio State since Dwayne. Like this, like the unbridled swag of like.
Yeah, I thought Justin had it in maybe a more kind of understated way.
Yeah, in a more quiet way.
Yeah.
But like, yeah. Okay, I think that's fair. Will Howard. What's Will Howard's special trait?
Like his experience,
bigness, largeness.
Yeah,
largeness of size.
Yeah. I mean, he is big. He's 6'5", 240. That's a big dude.
That's okay. Special trait, large.
I think it's like the combination of his size and how much he has played that allows him to be like a little more calm under duress. Maybe is that okay? Like, can I kind of lump all those things together and say that's just because it's not? I don't think it's anything to do with his arm, which is maybe not a great thing to say about a quarterback. But
again, making everyone feel better about the Ohio State quarterback situation.
I mean, he throws with part of it is the way he throws it. Like his mechanics are kind of weird, but I think like intermediate short stuff, he's pretty good. He's got decent touch and I think pretty good accuracy. It's when he has to throw the ball down the field where it starts to get away from him a little bit. So, but I think it's like poise is probably the word. If I could put it in the one word, I guess I would say poise. If
he has largeness of size, is he going to truck a safety like Cardale at some point this year when he gets out of the pocket?
Yeah, he could. He actually is like it's weird watching him run because he's not sudden. Like he's not like a sudden like give you a little juke kind of athlete, but it doesn't take him very long, it seems like, to get to his top speed. And then, like, when he's 6'5", 240, running reasonably fast in the middle of the field, it's like, I don't want to tackle that. So I could see that happening.
Safety trucking.
Yeah.
Special trait. Floor and ceiling. Do you think the floor is higher with this Ohio State quarterback? Whoever the quarterback will be, will the floor be higher than it was a year ago?
Yes, I think so. I think that is like the general idea of all this is like why they went and got it's why they went and got Will Howard to raise the floor. Right.
And then the ceiling, I think it's possible that like the best version of confident, poised, protected, using his weapons, Kyle McCord. I think that's that ceiling, if it exists, even if only there's a 5% chance that it exists, I think that ceiling might be higher than the Devin Brown or Will Howard ceiling. It's just, it's kind of in an attic and you don't really know how to get to it. And there's like a ladder and the door is sort of
it's a little spooky up there. You don't know if you want to go up there.
Yeah. And there's a ghost and wild animals up there. But I do think it might be higher, but they're much more interested in raising the floor than a sky-high ceiling at the quarterback this year, right?
For this particular season, yes. It's a weird sort of very small window where I think that is the thought process. And I taking like all of their skills into account, and like projecting them out to like the best possible version that they could be, I might say Devin Brown has the highest ceiling. But again, it's a question of like, can he get there? Will he get there?
So this is like, you've seen Up, right? The balloon Pixar movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like the guy won't sell his house. So this is the Ohio State quarterback house in 2024 is that nice little house, right? It's like a 2-story house. And again, maybe like this, you got to go up in the attic and it's kind of old. And then right next to it is the 100-story Julian Saying skyscraper that they built right next to the house. And it's like, we're actually there. That's under construction still. We don't think we're going to go move into that building this year, but it's right there.
It's not up to code yet, right? Yeah.
It's right.
We're not allowed to use it just yet. Yeah.
No, it's not the code. You go over and Nick Saban's the doorman at the Julian Saying skyscraper. Hello, Nick. Are you enjoying your retirement? Thanks for building right here in our backyard. That's our house for now, but we have a question about that skyscraper in a little bit. First, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk more about the Ohio State quarterback situation on Kings of Columbus. Back on Kings of Columbus, Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. This is Jordan. I know there is not much point with talking about what ifs now. But after going through a great offseason with one of the only concerns being quarterback, do you think Ryan Day looks back and wishes he just promised Kyle McCord the starting job and had a year 2 veteran quarterback who was solid and would probably have improved a significant amount? So I don't want to get into all the machinations of NIL and what did McCord need to stay. And it felt like they weren't on the same page. And I don't think blame is this. They parted ways.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless of the specifics, if Ryan Day could snap his fingers and have Kyle McCord back right now, and that would be an option, would he do it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Why?
Because I think he believes deep down that he has more of what he needs in Will Howard than he would have had in Kyle McCord.
So Kyle McCord versus all the portal possibilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think most Ohio State fans in that moment would have taken, show me what's behind door number 2.
Yeah.
It's Dylan Gabriel. It's Michael Pratt. It's Cam Ward. It's Will Howard. It's Will Rogers. It's Riley Leonard, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all standing there like in a little inflatable pool. And you can pick one of them. And then it turns out like you don't take door number 2 and you take what's in the box. And it's like, what's in the box is the guy who is going to be beaten out by Avery Johnson to be the starting quarterback at Kansas State. And that's what you get instead of Kyle McCord. So that because it is 2 different things. And certainly Will Howard was a possibility, right? But there was like a little Dylan Gabriel, Riley Leonard, at least like, in the moment, right? That's right. Am I reading that correctly?
The two names we heard immediately when I was like, Ohio State's looking on the portal were Dylan Gabriel and Will Howard. But Riley Leonard was certainly in that mix, but he had like the do not contact tag. Like it was like everyone knew he was going to Notre Dame, so it just felt like it wasn't ever going to happen. But Gabriel and Howard were like immediate two names you heard. Yeah.
Okay. So in the end, both you and Ryan Day would take Will Howard over Kyle McCord. That choice, A or B, you take Howard.
I would take Howard. Yeah.
Is it based on everything we just talked about for 40 minutes? Let's rehash everything. It's like higher certainty, higher floor, a little more certainty, or do you think last year left some scars, like on Day and on McCord, that maybe there was just like it rubbed the wrong way? Whereas Will Howard's fresh and new. He's not perfect, but he's new for here. And so just like it wasn't a terrible year one, although it was actually like year 4 when you go back to a year of recruitment and 2 years as a backup, and that it was just time to part. Because the thing that would be happening right now is, hey, Ryan, hey, Kyle, do you think you'll be better? How much better do you think you'll need to be? Hey, how much are you haunted by that interception to Marvin Harrison Jr. in the Michigan game? Hey, how come we saw that peak against Notre Dame, but we didn't see as much of a steady ascension as people expected? Hey, how much better do you think you'll be in year 2? Like, is just wiping all of that away. And even if Howard isn't that much more certain than McCord, is just different, better in this situation.
That's kind of where I am, right? You look at a player, McCord, who in my opinion, like, and I think it's fair to say that he was maybe not, I don't know, sort of like guided the best way he could have been, right? I think we touched on that, but didn't seem to handle like all of this all that well. Like the competition, the situation he was in, having to play on the field, having to get better, having to rise to the occasion in some pretty big games. Like he just didn't seem ready for much of any of it. And it's not to say that he couldn't get there after a year of going through it, but part of me wonders if what you just laid out, like an off season of nothing but questions about that, would that like stunt that growth at all, right? If that's the only thing that's like consuming him is like constant questions about like, why weren't you good enough last year? Does that yield the best results in year 2? Like that would worry me a little bit. Whereas like Will Howard, who certainly has questions following him, also has like a little bit of a fresh start, it feels like, too. Just like that dynamic to me doesn't exist. And also he's older and more experienced too. So I think that would help him handle that, even if that dynamic did exist. But it just kind of felt mostly like change was necessary, if like as vague as that sort of is.
I think I agree with that. Fresh start from McCord at Syracuse, fresh start for Will Howard at Ohio State are both good things for the quarterbacks and the programs. And again, I think Kyle McCord will be good at Syracuse, but he can have 2 awful games, help Syracuse win 8 or 9 games, and be a savior. If he has 2 awful games at Ohio State, it'll be like, you're the reason we didn't win a national championship.
Right. So that's not for everybody. Yeah.
It wouldn't be for me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be for me. So, no, it would. I'm a baller. It'd be for me. I'd take it. Let's go. So, but I understood why Day in the moment, and then especially if whatever there was with like McCord perhaps wanting reassurances in terms of the job and perhaps NIL, and Ryan Day being like, assurances? Did we beat Michigan and no one told me? That's 3 straight to the team up north. There isn't, if you find an assurance anywhere in this building, please tell me where they are. Yeah. I would like an assurance that I'm not going to get ripped out of this office if we don't beat Michigan next year. So where's my assurance that you're going to beat Michigan, my quarterback? Like that. Right. I do think there can be, this is not a place for assurances. See that behind you? That's the 5-star who's coming. And if it's not him, it's the next 5-star.
Yeah.
So There are no assurances here.
There are not.
Okay. So nobody, I don't think there are a lot of Ohio State fans lamenting why did we let McCord go? Right? I don't think like that's where, and I'm not saying that that's where this texter is, where Jordan is. But I don't know that that's the overwhelming sentiment, right?
No, not that I can't believe we let him go, but maybe more of like, I can't believe what we have now doesn't jump out to me as like a definite upgrade.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Yeah,
that. I think
true.
that's more of the issue, I think.
But and there's a lot of like, there's the devil you know and the devil you don't.
Yeah.
When you get on a highway and there's a backup of traffic, do you stay on the known road and assume the traffic will clear, or do you immediately look for the first place you can get off and find a back road to see if that's faster?
I neither. I pull up my phone to see how far ahead the traffic jam is, and then decide from there. Because I have that option. Yeah. No, I usually just stay on the highway. Yeah.
I'm off.
You're a big back road guy. Yeah. I've done enough road trips from here to Bloomington where we don't drive on a highway at all to know that.
Didn't you and Ari and I drive somewhere where we were on a back road that felt like a farmer's driveway, and we drove past perhaps a serial killer dressed like a scarecrow at 11 o'clock at night on the side of the road?
Yes, that was an Indiana game, I think. I don't know how we ended up there. We were like driving like on one of those roads where it's just like cornfields on both sides, and it was dark. It was dark and it was raining. And then like a figure just like emerged from the corn as we were driving down the road. And we were like, was that a murderer or a ghost? Which is like really funny because I got a text from someone like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago that said like, Ari's telling us a story about how you guys once saw a ghost on the side of the road. Is this true? And I was like, yes, it's very true.
And guess what? The ghost is Will Howard.
Yeah.
Because I want to drive. I want to get off. Once there is a 5-minute backup on the Kyle McCord interstate, I'm getting off and I'm looking for the Will Howard ghost in the corn. So, but because then you get a story. That's what I tell my kids all the time. Do something. If it's great, it's great. If it's awful, it's a story. That's Nobody right. tells the story of like, remember that time there was traffic on the highway and we stayed on the highway and then after 18 minutes it cleared up? Oh, great story. There's no way to live. All right. This is Dan. We're getting into some like versions of similar questions here, but I think they're all really valid. Would Ryan Day and Ohio State be better served standing by a starting quarterback for a few years, or is the bar too high and the time too far gone for that process? So this is like beyond the should they have stuck with Kyle McCord this year, and this is like a developmental quarterback situation. Mm-hmm. This I think is like Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. We think Dylan Raiola is going to be good. There's a lot of optimism around that. If he's not great in year one and Nebraska doesn't make a huge leap, they're not going to bail. Like Dylan Raiola is going to be Nebraska's starting quarterback for a minimum of 3 years, unless he's so good he transfers back to Georgia or something, right? Mm-hmm. The bar's too high at Ohio State to do that, right? You cannot throw away any portion of a season for any reason in service of next season at any point. So I think Dan is sort of answering his own question with, is the bar too high? It is too high.
The bar is too high. I think it's a different conversation with like a Raiola, right? Or a CJ Stroud even, because there were CJ Stroud's first year as a starter, 2021, like was not particularly great. He had to sit that game. They lost to Oregon. And Ryan Day stood by him when he necessarily didn't have to, right? He was a
Heisman finalist. He was a Heisman finalist.
No, not in. But I mean, like early on in that year, right?
Yeah.
There was not like a knee-jerk reaction. There was like that wasn't a knee-jerk reaction to like, well, this guy's not it. Let's start the next one kind of thing. Like,
I was knee-jerk, and I was like, if McCord plays good against Akron, let's have a conversation. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like within a season, you have maybe that kind of. I don't know. Maybe I think you're right. I think the bar's too high. I think generally the bar's too high. If you really believe in the quarterback, like if Kyle McCord's season happened the way it last year, but Ryan Day's like, no, this kid, like, he's got something special to him. I really believe in him. Like, we're sticking with him, like, kind of thing. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily wrong. You're sticking your neck out in a major way. But I don't know that it's wholly unreasonable. It's probably unlikely at a place like Ohio State. You probably shouldn't do it too often, but I could see it situationally making sense.
I just think at the top, whatever it is, 8, 10 programs, especially in the portal world, where good quarterbacks are dropping out of the sky in a way they didn't used to. You know, Notre Dame could have said this year, we won't bother to bring in Riley Leonard. Let's just play CJ Carr from the jump and let him take his lumps. And then in 2025 and 2026, we think CJ Carr is going to be one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the country. Ohio State didn't know that because they didn't know. Well, I guess they did have Julian Saying by the time they got Will Howard, right?
No, they got Howard first and then Saying.
They did get Howard first.
Yeah.
So like they didn't know that. I don't think Aaron Nolan was quite at the level to be like, that just the heck with it. But like you can't, because at Ohio State, every single season has a chance to be a national championship season. There's no such thing as building, and you owe it to the players. You can't have JT Tuimoloau, Denzel Burke, Jordan Hancock, Tyreek Williams, and Jack Sawyer come back and then be like, hey, by the way, here's the freshman quarterback who's never played, who's going to start for you. You guys excited?
Yeah.
Which was because the one time that happened, it did not go well. In 2008, when James Laurinaitis and Malcolm Jenkins and Brian Robisky and Marcus Freeman and Alex Boone and all those guys came back for one more year after losing the national title game in 06 and 07. And after 3 games, Jim Tressel benched the 6th-year starting quarterback and put in a true freshman. Not the best, because it was such a break. Like they lose to USC, they have offensive line issues, and Tress is like, the future is here. But those veterans were like, what do you mean the future is here? We're here.
Yeah.
And so there's a real cost to that. There absolutely is a real cost to that. Even if it kind of made sense, because in that world back then, once you lose 35-3 to USC, you're not getting back to the national title game when only 2 teams get in. So it's like, well, then what are we doing? But then you get to a point where Terrell Pryor's so young and you don't score against Penn State and you lose that game, and then you wind up losing the bowl game to Texas. And it's not nearly the season that those guys thought they were going to have, but there was that's what Julian Saying would be right now with this veteran defense. You would have the potential for that. So you can't do it. And if you're just like next year, Julian Saying or Aaron Nolan is going to be the starting quarterback, and then you're going to have a quarterback for 2 years, just like Bryce Young. Once Mac Jones left, it's like, okay, Bryce Young sat for a year and now he's the quarterback for 2 years. Like that's normal. But anything leaning into youth any more than that, especially when you can get a decent portal guy, no chance.
Yeah, I think that's right. I agree with that.
Which leads us to, when is Julian Saying going to play? No, wait, is that the?
Yeah, that's
what? This is our guy Seth, smart dude. I'm thinking about how Julian Saying might leapfrog presumptive starter Will Howard at some point this year and become QB1. I was wondering how that might happen. At first, the thought of the easy early schedule made this possible. Saying flashes and can't be denied. But Howard will also be playing against a light schedule and could therefore look better than he really is. What is the road toward Julian Saying taking over that doesn't include a bad loss? And is there a ghost on the side of that road? What do you say, Bill?
I don't know if there is one that doesn't include a loss. I guess I suppose it's possible that the wins are a little too close for comfort, and Will Howard is not the guy you thought he was. Like there's just the baseline level of quarterback play is not what you believe it needs to be. Whether that's some kind of statistical benchmark or just a vibe, I think could maybe lead to a change, but I don't know. I think it would have to be as drastic as a loss for anything to happen. I don't know that there's a road without that. You disagree?
No. And that remember that whole thing I just said about like losing to USC and that whole loss. Yeah. Actually, like it's that. I think if they go to Oregon and are pretty clearly not as good as Oregon, or maybe even not pretty clearly. I do think there's a world where like, oh my God, they survived because Oregon was marching down the field for the winning score in the last 2 minutes and Denzel Burke jumped the route and had a game-saving interception with 7 seconds left that saved Ohio State and let them win that game 17-16. But the offense sputtered the whole day. The quarterback, whoever it is, threw 2 bad picks. Like they had a halftime lead and they came out in the third quarter and had 4 straight 3-and-outs. And you were like, how is this offense not better against a good team? And you walk away from that game thinking, win or loss, but you walk away thinking that's not good enough. Like if we play like that in the playoff, we're not winning the national championship. I'm not sure we're beating Michigan. We might not even beat Penn State. I think if you walk away from that, I think right where that game is at the 6th or 7th game of the year. I think it is right at the spot where you have enough information, but there is also enough time to adjust that you could get back to Columbus and say, we're not good enough. The offense is not good enough. The quarterback play is not good enough. And this is not goofing around time. And we have the best freshman quarterback in the country right in that skyscraper.
Yeah.
So I think it's that. I think it's the Oregon game tells you that's not good enough.
Yeah. It is the 6th game of the year and also is immediately followed by an off week, which is like perfect. If that were to happen, that would be what you'd want, like a week to get that all figured out.
Because in 2017, I thought after the Oklahoma game, that wasn't good enough, the way JT Barrett played in that game. And I was ready for a Dwayne Haskins at the minimum look. I think Dwayne Haskins was ready for a look. But JT Barrett had the longest resume in the history of Ohio State quarterbacking, and Urban wasn't going to switch. And that might have been the right answer. Maybe the Iowa game would tell you it wasn't the right answer, but maybe the Penn State game the week before the Iowa game would tell you that fourth quarter it was the right answer. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how that 17 season shakes out if they make a switch there. But Will Howard's not JT Barrett.
Nope.
So I think Beckman Pryor, I think Barrett Haskins, I think there are enough in the realm of.
What about Devin Brown though? How does that factor into this? Because on paper, he's going to be QB2.
He is QB2.
If not QB1, I guess. But
here's the thing. So when you have this battle, this preseason battle, you're going to have a loser in that. You did not win the job. Okay. So now you go to Oregon, and it's not good enough. The quarterback play's not good enough. And now you think to yourself, the solution is let's go to the guy who wasn't good enough 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. He wasn't good enough. Or is the solution the guy who we're pretty sure is going to be good enough? We just might be accelerating the timetable. Like if it's going sideways in the Oregon game and you take QB1 out and put in QB2, let's see what happens here in the moment. But I think if you're making a change, I do not think Ohio State will make a quarterback change this year that goes from QB1 to QB2. If there is a change, and I think there's a non-zero chance, I think it goes from QB1 to QB future.
Yeah, but not. I think I agree with that, but not in a way because we just talked about like sacrificing seasons. Like that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about elevating the position. We're talking about
that's not good enough. Saying's been lighting up in practice. He knows the playbook. He wasn't ready in August. He's ready now. We're going to make the playoff, but now we're having a ceiling conversation. And we needed to raise the floor of the room, but now we need to raise the ceiling of the position because Dylan Gabriel threw 5 touchdowns against us or whatever. Maybe Dylan is a 17-16 game. He didn't throw 5 touchdowns. But like our quarterback play, if this is our quarterback play, we're not going to win the national title. So how do we elevate our quarterback play? We do it with our 5-star freshman who let's get him. We have 2 weeks to get him ready.
Yeah.
And like you could, even if you lose to Penn State or Michigan, you're still going to make the playoff. And we'd rather be a 10 seed with a prepared Julian Saying than sort of scrape by, maybe not even scrape by, maybe beat Penn State, beat Michigan, avenge a loss to Oregon in the Big Ten title game, be the 2 seed. But we're still we're being carried by our defense, absolutely carried. And we're wondering if we're entering December, wondering if the quarterback play is good enough. This is you had to raise the quarterback floor, but it's a ceiling year. So that would be my scenario. And I don't think that's an impossible scenario. Does that feel like an impossible? You come back from Oregon, Chip and Ryan crack open a beer once they got off the charter, sit in Ryan's office until 5:00 in the morning and decide they're going to the freshman?
It's not impossible. I would say it's pretty unlikely.
They do it in a movie. They would do it in a movie.
That is how they would do it in the movie. Yeah. There'd be like a nice like musical bed playing while like they're clicking through the film. Just like, just can't stop watching Julian, you know?
Yeah. Okay. I'm at like 10% chance that something like that happens.
I'm at like 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do a
still
survey.
not 0. Yeah.
We'll ask people. Please rank what percent chance you think that is from 1 to 1,000.
Yeah. I had forgotten, by the way, because as I was like thinking about this question, I went back because I think there have been times previously where we talked about Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence as it relates to this conversation. I had forgotten that Clemson went into that season playing them both. It was like an unresolved quarterback competition between Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence. And they were basically like splitting time evenly. Didn't lose a game. It just got to the point where like, I think Trevor Lawrence ended up starting against Syracuse and then was the starting quarterback for the rest of the year. Okay. So this will not play out that same way. I don't think we're not going to go to the Akron game with Ryan Day saying we're going to play everybody and figure out what happens. Like, I don't think we're going to do that again.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So those are our quarterback questions that people had. You know, I don't want it to be a summer of angst for Ohio State fans while you have the best collection of talent in the country, but I think they're all reasonable questions, right?
No, I think so. Yeah, I think this is after what happened last year. Everyone is well within their rights, and I think being very reasonable to question these things.
Summer of angst. All right, we'll relieve your angst and perhaps relieve areas of the body where you might have a little discomfort. We'll do that next with What You Watching, What You Eating, What You Thinking on Kings of Columbus. What you watching, what you eating, what you thinking on Kings of Columbus. Bill, you been watching anything?
I have watched something. I watched there's a new show on Netflix called Tires. Are you familiar with the comedian Shane Gillis?
I've heard people talk about him, and I feel like this might be one of those things where I'm too old for him. Is that correct?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, or it might just I feel like I maybe know you well enough to know that you would not maybe find him all that funny. The show is like it's like his creation. It's on Netflix. It's 6 episodes. It's 20 minutes apiece. So like I flew through it. I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was pretty good. After starting kind of slow, like the last like episodes like 3 to 6 were quite funny, I thought. But it is a show where like it's like people just kind of like being mean to people, which I know you're not a huge fan of. Yeah, so it's probably not for you. But if there are people out there who like that style of comedy or like Shane Gillis, I would recommend it. But I also like it too because it takes place at a company called Valley Forge Automotive, and like everyone talks with Philadelphia hoagie mouth. So like I feel like I'm at home when I'm watching it. Yeah, it's great.
Do you feel like the actors like they had to make sure they went to Philly and they adopted the correct Philadelphia accent?
A couple of them are pretty good. I actually didn't go to look to see like if they're actually from Philly because Shane Gillis is not. Shane Gillis is actually from your neck of the woods. He's from Camp Hill. PA.
Oh, for real?
Yeah,
it's like 15 minutes from where I grew up. That's crazy.
Yeah. He like reps Philly pretty hard, but he's not from Philly. He's from Camp Hill, and he went to Trinity High School.
He
with the
went to Trinity? Oh my God. My high school and the Trinity girls, we had girls basketball games that were absolute. I said horrible things about Trinity basketball when I was in high school. Oh, he went to Trinity? Oh, now I hate him. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So no, that's good. That's a good reason to hate him. But it is like it's like a Philly kind of show. So I enjoy it.
Is he like the next? Is he like the son of who's the guy who has the curly hair who was the minor league baseball player and the vice principal and that?
Oh, Danny McBride.
Is he in that vein?
I did not consider him in that vein until I started watching the show, and that's actually funny because my brother said, I think it was my brother. It was either my brother or Berm actually said
Berm
like
is your brother.
Said like, I feel like he's trying to do a Danny McBride thing in this show, which he does accomplish quite well. But yes, it's a very similar vibe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't watch those shows. All right, so I'm watching a thing that I'm also reading because I went recently, and in Columbus, one of my favorite authors was there. His name's Harlan Coben, and he gave a talk, and I got a book signed, and he was very nice. I think I've talked about before. He does he writes mysteries about suburban life, but then I didn't realize there's 8 shows on Netflix, so now I'm watching all the Netflix shows, and they're all murder. Just everyday murder. I think actually maybe I've talked about this already on here, but I'm just reinforcing you can watch it on Netflix.
Shows about his books are on Netflix?
Yeah, they adapt his books. 8 of his books have been adapted into Netflix series, but they're all based in Europe. So one's based in Poland and one's based in France, and a bunch of them are based in England. But it's just normal suburban life with a slice of murder, which is I don't like humor. That's me.
Yeah.
But I do like suburban murder. That's I think.
Would you watch a Danny McBride show if he was how he is, but he just ends up killing people at the end of every episode?
But if Danny McBride lived in my suburb, I would be like, oh my God, you're the most annoying person I've ever met. So I don't want to be like Danny McBride at the playground talking about how I saw a shadowy figure outside my house. Can you calm down? That would be the show. It would be like Danny McBride moves into my neighborhood and I kill him. And that's the suburban murder. And everybody would know it because it'd be like, oh my God, Doug hates that guy. He definitely did it. All right. What are you eating?
I'm eating bagels. That's what I don't know if I've ever talked about. There's a place in Columbus, and I don't know if they deliver to the entire city, but they deliver to where we live on the east side of Columbus. It's called Sammy's Bagels.
Okay.
And you go on their website and you say, I would love 13 bagels. I want, I don't know, four plain, 4 jalapeno cheddar, 4 egg bagels, and toss an oatmeal raisin in there. And then if you order it by 2:00 in the afternoon, the next morning at 5:00 in the morning, a magical bagel elf just comes to your house and drops it off on your patio. And we order from them quite often. But we just got a fresh shipment on the day we're recording this, so that I wanted to make sure that I plugged Sammy's because they're good. They were I think it's like a specific type of bagel that you can get on the East Coast, and these remind me of that. These are they basically are that, and I think it's actually called Sammy's New York Bagels. So I would give them my highest recommendation.
Could you eat a bagel every day?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could too. It's bagels are dangerous. Bagels
they
are very dangerous because when you eat pizza, you're eating pizza. I feel like I can eat a bagel and not realize I'm eating a bagel, and then I eat 3 bagels, and I probably shouldn't eat 3 bagels. Yeah. So a magical bagel elf sounds ideal to me, but also sounds very, very dangerous. But I think a bagel bread is the best food, and a bagel might be the best bread, which means that a bagel is the best thing that a human can eat.
I think you're right. I don't think I'd argue against that, but there definitely are when we get an order, 2 days later, I'll just be sitting there at the end of the day thinking to myself, I had a bagel with every meal today. I had a bagel with cream cheese for breakfast. I had a turkey and cheese sandwich and a bagel for lunch, and then I had another bagel with cream cheese for dinner. It's I probably shouldn't do that.
When it was during the pandemic and you couldn't go anywhere, we did we went to Buckeye Lake for a vacation and just stayed in a house and walked around and saw nobody. But our big highlight was we went to our bagel place and got a week's worth of bagels. and took them to the place and was like, our vacation is just being in someone else's house and eating bagels. And by the end, like day 6, the bagels were like rock hard. Like you could have you could have used them as a hammer, but then you just wrap them in a wet paper towel and put them in the microwave for like 30 seconds and it softens them up. So like almost too pro bagel. Like if you can love something too much, I think that's how we both probably feel about bagels.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's right.
So my thing is, why are side salads at restaurants so good when it's clearly just, sometimes you can tell maybe they took a head of lettuce and actually peeled it. Sometimes they ripped the bag open and dumped it in. And I can't, we've been going to Red Robin a decent amount lately. And they have the unlimited sides. And so like they draw you in with the unlimited fries. You can get refills, but they also have unlimited side salads. So I'll get like 4 salads at Red Robin, and it's lettuce poured out of a bag and like cheese poured out of a bag and maybe like a cucumber or something on there. And and croutons. And I think this is literally the greatest thing I've ever eaten. Why can't I replicate this? And my wife and I have had too many conversations about this, mostly me talking and her listening. I think it's that the bowls are so cold, and I don't even know how I would get my bowl. Oh, you want to get your bowl cold? Call 1-800-BAGEL ELF. He'll get your bowl cold. But I don't know if I can live in a world where I have bowls in my freezer anticipating my lunch salad that feels like a bridge too far. But I like want to call the server over at Red Robin and be like, how do you make this delicious salad?
Yeah.
That is tearing open a bag of lettuce. I don't know.
Maybe it's the temperature that they refrigerate stuff at that's a little different that makes it.
Do I need to walk in like a restaurant freezer? That's the key. A restaurant freezer and a 40-pound bag of lettuce, and I'll be in heaven. It's so good.
Does it bother you when you go to a restaurant and you really want a side salad and they don't have one on the menu, but they have like a $14.99 Caesar salad, and you just say like, "Can I have less of that?" and I'll pay you like half, and they like, "You can't do it."
Yeah, you have it in the kitchen. You have a bag of lettuce in the kitchen. What are we doing here? And like the Olive Garden's like top end, right? I mean, you go the Olive Garden salad. It's like I don't even care about the pasta. Just give me 9 bowls of this salad. I don't know how.
You know, my favorite was the Ruby Tuesday salad bar. Was top flight. Yeah.
Of all the terrible things about the pandemic, number 1 might be the death of salad bars.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yep. I remember Wendy's used to have a salad bar. It was good. Yeah.
Pizza Hut used to have a salad bar with its buffet. Yeah. Oh my God. If I go back in time, it's like, go back in time, what would I do? Kill baby Hitler. Number 2, go to the Pizza Hut buffet. If I had a time machine. Oh my God. It'd be so awesome. All right. What are you thinking about?
You wanted to park some time here for Gold Bond powder? Is that what?
Sell that powder.
It's great. I use it because you're the one who put me onto it. I had never used it before.
It is. I didn't know if it was me or not.
We were in a hotel. I think it was me, you, and Ari in a hotel room because there were times where we would share hotel rooms back in the day, and you just walked out. And you guys use this? It was like the most sage wisdom anyone's ever given anybody. You guys use this Gold Bond powder? It's like, what do you use it for? And you told us.
Yeah.
And then it's like, yeah. Now I have had it and use it ever since. Yeah.
Yeah. You can powder your feet, but that's not really what the primary purpose is.
That's not what it's for. No.
I think that's passed down by sports writers because that happened to me when I was covering Major League Baseball.
That's important.
25.
Yeah.
And I think it was Jim Salisbury of the Philadelphia Inquirer, who's like a Hall of Fame baseball writer. And he was like, "Did you powder your balls?" It's like, not yet.
Shout out to Jim Salisbury, by the way. Go Google Jim Salisbury and look at him. He looks like the exact type of person who would say that to someone he doesn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of guy. He got in a fight one time with Jose Mesa in the Phillies locker room after Jose Mesa blew a save, and Jose Mesa's like 6'5", and Jim Salisbury's like 5'5", and he was like looking up at him. He's like, "You want to go? You want to go?" And I was like, I will take powder advice from that man.
Yeah. Were they yelling
He's
at
like
each other
a magical elf.
Yeah. He's the magical ball. Joe Table. Yeah. He's the magical ball powder elf.
If you could do that, if you could order, it's like as long as you get your order in by 2 p.m., when you wake up at 5 a.m., there will be ball powder and bagels on your step. It'd be like, I'm never
Nothing
leaving
else.
my house.
Yeah, don't need anything else.
So I hope there's somebody out there. It's nice to be, you get out of the shower and it keeps you nice and fresh. And it's
Yeah.
for anybody. I mean, it's just, there's a lot that happens down there during the course of the day, and you've got to proactively do something about it. And once you do, you'll never stop.
Yeah.
So
And
like,
by
it's not weird.
It's not weird. The impetus of this conversation. So I saw someone on Twitter say like, "What's the least expensive thing you own that's made the most positive impact on your quality of life?" And my answer was Gold Bond powder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you powdering? All right. So I was thinking about this. Like it's a lot of times it's usually, we need to talk about robots more probably on this show, but a lot of times, like you talk about robots. The one time on Buckeye Talk when I had like a robot expert on, and it was like, hey, robots. And like you think, oh, they'll be like self-drive, there's gonna be cars one day driven by robots. Like, well, they're not gonna build a robot and have the robot like open the door and get in the driver's seat and the robot drives your car. It's like you create the thing that becomes the robot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like all these things where you think like there's a problem and you think like, what can the answer be? And do you remember the days? This is not a thing. It's like one of these things, right? Everybody knows this, but like, you remember the days. Did you ever have a moment where when you had your cash card, when you were going to an automatic cash machine, did your generation ever accidentally leave the card in the machine and like walk away?
Yeah. I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I can imagine the meeting they were having when it was like, well, should we put up signs like, don't forget your card? And then somebody was like, well, what if we just do it that when the transaction's over, to get the money, you have to pull your card out first and then you get the money, as opposed to I came for money, I got my money and I'm gone. And oh my God, I lost my card. And I just, that thinking, like everybody in the meeting is like, what should the font be on the sign that says, don't forget your card? And then the person's like, well, that's not how you solve the problem. Let's actually solve the problem. And I was doing that the other day because like I would leave my card in the machine every week if I still could, but you can't anymore. A person changed the world. And it's just a reminder of like, sometimes like we all think like this and it's like, the answer's over here. The answer's over here. Just think about it a different way. And once you do, it's staring you right in the face. But how did we live in a world where it was like, put in your card, take the money, leave the card? And everybody's like, well, there's nothing that can be done. This is how humans exist. Sorry. We all did it.
There were, there was for the longest time too, like you had to, your card was received by a machine that like fully like just took the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Like now you can like tap it or you can just swipe it. Like even that technology, I think, changed the world. But no, the eliminating the ability to leave your debit card in the ATM.
Yeah.
There's a real trooper who did that.
Yeah. So just apply that to your life. Whenever you have a problem, don't think about the sign to remind people. Think about how can you do this a completely different way. It'll change your life. For instance, when Bill Landis thought about, should I change the kind of pants that I wear? No. It's all about the powder.
That's
Problem solved. What should I do? How do I find a better parking spot when I go out to get bagels? Have the bagels come to you. Change the world. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. We always appreciate you guys making Kings of Columbus part of your Ohio State week. Thanks to our producer, Mike Yorostowski, as always. And if you haven't tried Kings of the North lately, we certainly would invite you to go check that out. We're talking about Northern football twice a week, wherever you find podcasts, and on YouTube, that separate Kings of the North channel. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of Columbus.